Hey everybody, welcome to first in what looks to be a series of tutorials we're going to do over VR Funhouse modding. Today I'm going to take you guys through quite a bit of a topics, kind of going over what modding is in VR Funhouse, how we do it, and I'm going to go through a couple examples of some really specific areas of modding that you might be interested in. And all that type of good stuff when it comes to VR Funhouse. So for those of you who aren't fully familiar with VR Funhouse, it is a VR title that NVIDIA has produced. We did what we could to do kind of a high production value title with kind of simple games that's really accessible to anybody. To get everybody into VR. Get your head in there and have fun. So before we really dive in, I want to give you guys a couple things to start with. So right now, NVIDIA is hosting a mod contest. You can actually go to developer.nvidia.com /VR-funhouse-mod contest, or just go to Google and search VR Funhouse mod contest. This should pop up. It'll give you the instructions on how to enter. We've got some serious prizes here. First place is cash prize with an NVIDIA Titan X. That's the Titan X Pascal. Second prize gets a 1080, and third prize is a 1070. So go ahead, check this out. I'm hoping these tutorials will help you guys build something big and beautiful, and really help you guys out with this contest. So let's get right down to it, and let's tell you how to actually get the Funhouse mod kit. If you are familiar with Unreal Engine 4, this will be pretty natural to you. But to get the VR Funhouse mod kit, you need to go to www.unreal.com, and I'll pull that up real quick. And you're going to actually pull down the mod kit. This will pull down the Epic's game launcher, which you'll see right here. You'll log in, you'll look through these various tabs, and you'll actually see a modding tab. Underneath the modding tab is going to be VR Funhouse. As you can see, I've already got it running. There's going to be a couple of useful links down at the bottom, how to download VR Funhouse from Steam, and also how to learn to mod VR Funhouse. This will actually take you to the mod kit page on developer.nvidia.com. We've got a ton of interesting documents here that should be useful for you. Get started with modding. We've actually got a large kit here, including some links to some VR or to some YouTube tutorials that we've put together, and a bunch of words. So if you're really into reading, I got plenty of stuff for you to read. All right, so let's dive into the editor. So we've got it up and running at this point. This is the VR Funhouse editor. It is no different in practice than standard Unreal Engine 4. So if you have good experience with that, you'll have no problem diving in. VR Funhouse is right now is on Unreal Engine 4.11 QA. So if you are pulling in assets from other engines or from other projects, 4.11 is the project file we're on right now. There is ways to pull down from higher project versions down to ours. So to give you a quick walkthrough to how this is kind of set up, we have a persistent level that loads at the very beginning of the game. Its name is User VR Base 2. This has underneath it a bunch of sublevels that we load as you play the game. There is going to be, now this is actually a levels tab, and I'm going to be smart today hopefully and not do stuff behind my face on the screen, but I apologize if I did fail in that regard. So we have the persistent level. This is User VR Base. There's not a whole lot in User VR Base except for this teleport node, which is actually the border for where you can teleport inside. We also have some of the level loading logic is in the User VR Base 2. Obviously, since it's the persistent level, it's going to need to load all of its sublevels underneath. And a couple level settings. The next important one to talk about is the Envirosphere. So I'm going to go ahead and hide. You can actually hide anything with this toggle level visibility, everything with the Envirosphere. The Envirosphere is a static baked level that is just the exterior of VR Funhouse. Past that, we actually have three separate lighting levels. These are unique levels depending on the situation we have at hand. These house our dynamic lights. Right now we use 4 lights generally per sublevel. We use a dynamic light that has dynamic shadows enabled. And this is going to be our big key light that gets all of our nice dynamic shadows. We try to keep it to 1 to limit performance concerns. 90 FPS obviously is what you're going to want to maintain in any VR title. That's 11 milliseconds. It's not a whole lot of time to do a lot. So you want to be conscious of not too many lights. So really we have just 1 dynamic light throughout the entire game. The rest are going to be statics or fill lights. That's what the other 3 lights are, and I actually can show you. Let me go ahead and hide this so you can see just what's in here. This particular sub-level, which is the main one for most of the level. We have 2 specific ones for hair because we kind of wanted to pop up some of the shadow resolution to make the hair pop out a little bit better. So we have our dynamic shadow, we've got a fill, 2 fill lights, and some other spotlights. These are basically some, well, for lack of a better term, fake GI type setups, right? So we can get some really nice lighting in and on these levels. And then finally, we're going to have a large series, and move us back in here so you can actually see. We have a large series of game levels. So we have our stream for intro. This is, let me turn on the stream light. You can see the difference in lighting with not having your lighting sublevel on or off. We've got our clown painter and all the various ones as you move down this list. There we go. There's our nice hairy moles. The other thing that's more important, that's important about how these levels are constructed that I want to talk about real quick is where all of the data is held for kind of what your VR character does. So if we go and we look at one of these main levels, let me open up one that's a little bit more empty. Cannon Skeet. You'll see these circles on the ground. They hold kind of the various things here. I'm gonna go ahead and scroll for VR. Here we go. So you're gonna see this. There's gonna be one of these in every game level. This is our drag and drop base, is what we call this. We call it drag and drop because if you want to have a VR level, you basically have a VR level and you drag one of these in there, and that is how we determine your hand positions, your HMD position. We also determine what is in your hands from this. And let me pull up the details tab, which I conveniently hid before I start this on accident. And I'll make it nice and big here on the right side. This is, like I said, this is the drag and drop. And if you look through here, you'll actually see controller blueprints left and right. This is Cannon Skeet. What is Cannon Skeet? Cannon Skeet's a game where we have a giant cannon that just shoots ceramic plates at you. So we have 2 guns. So this is gun A, complete blueprint. You can actually hit this spyglass to browse in the content browser. And you'll actually see this is, like I said, where we house all our different guns, our hands, our boxing glove, various blueprints. Here's the squirt guns. So if I wanted to make Cannon Skeet have a gun in one hand and a squirt gun in another, I would simply take so it's L, R, 0 is left, R is left is 0, right is 1. I'd literally go through here. I would grab the goo gun, plop it over, and now I'd have a pistol in one hand, a goo gun in the other. These are kind of the main components of VR Funhouse, kind of the most important stuff you need to understand right off the bat of how this is all kind of placed around. Now that you have kind of that base knowledge, I want to talk about how you actually mod in VR Funhouse. We've got a very specific setup that I'm going to go ahead and explain to you real quick after I auto-save some out-of-date packages. We have a folder, and let me pull up the content browser and make it a little bigger for you, called the mods folder. How VR Funhouse works is that when the game loads, it's going to look in this folder for anything named the same as something else in the game. To give you an example of this, if we made a new level that we wanted to run, so let's take this foam gun base. If I took that level, saved a copy of it into this mods folder, when the game ran, the persistent level would call the foam gun base. And as it did that, first it would go, hold on, is there a foam gun base in the mods folder? And if there was, it would load that instead. We called that a mutation. It's a direct one-to-one reference. Once you have already done that swap, whatever that your new modded level calls is what it'll use. So generally how we suggest this, and we have a bunch of sample mods in here with existing hierarchies. And I'm going to go over this one a little bit later here, the big top sample. If I had this arena tent renamed Envirosphere, then it would be replaced. But I keep all the assets under this asset folder, and they're all referenced by the arena tent. The reason that this is important is every time you have to do a direct lookup, the engine has to stop and do that direct lookup. So you don't want to have 500 loose assets at the top of the mods tree, because that's all it looks for, is things in the very, very top of the tree. And then everything else underneath that has to be referenced by something at the top of the tree. So you want to probably keep this to something like 40, 50, 60 assets max in the top level of the mods folder. Everything else you should be referencing from underneath. This will help your levels load faster, your game load faster at the beginning of the game. Like I said, 40, 50, that's pretty safe at this point. To give you an example of some of the mods you might want to do, if you were to do like a direct replacement of the gun with a Tommy gun or a shotgun, I think I just saw a shotgun mod show up on Steam Workshop, you will probably want to do a direct replacement of the gun A complete blueprint. So you just make a copy of it, you would drag it into mods folder, and you'd start working on it there. If you were to want to just change a level, I recommend, there's a couple ways you can do this. If you want to add new levels to the rotation, you're going to have to modify. So if you want to have the existing Funhouse game plus a couple other games interjected in the middle, you'll actually want to have to modify user VR base 2. You'll have to go into the level blueprint, which everybody, feel free to avert your eyes to, oh gosh, there's everything. I know, this is blueprint. If you're not familiar with it, may look like a very large amount of stuff, but it's very quickly understood. It is node-based coding, and our artists and engineers both they have a blast with it. But we have level streaming areas where we actually pick things, the levels that you load. You can see here we actually have an order. So we start off with the foam gun, we go to the bow, and then we actually have let me keep scrolling, we have an array here. So if you wanted to add more levels, you would simply resave user VR base 2 in the mods folder, add your new levels you made also to the mods folder. They would not have to be in the top of the tree. They could be a folder down if you want to. And you just add additional titles to your array with the same name as the level. And as long as the user VR base, you also go to levels and add existing. As long as it is in this list here on the right here underneath my face, as long as it is that list that is underneath my face, it will load those additional levels in the order that you supplied it. So if you just want to just modify individual levels, just go ahead and do a mutation. The final thing that might be worth talking about is the idea of how do I once I've kind of thought of how I want to mod things, I want to do a level replacement, so I go ahead and I made my level, I put it in the mods folder. How do I test this stuff? What's my workflow for actually testing inside of Unreal Engine 4 with VR, with VR Funhouse? So, by the way, today I'm using, I've got an Oculus in here. VR Funhouse works on both Vive and Oculus, so you are free to choose the thing of your choice. Just as I'm only going to go under the knife here a couple times, because I think if I had this on my head the entire time we're talking, it might look a little goofy. We did find one trick. If you're doing Oculus development, they have a little sensor. Feel free to put a little piece of tape there so that your head's always on here. It's actually really helpful because otherwise the hands don't work with touch until it's on your head. So I'm in here in the game. We have a couple things you can do to actually play in editor. If you don't have a VR headset, it's fine. You can still mod VR Funhouse pretty readily. As long as you have an Xbox controller or a PS4 controller, just some sort of gamepad attached to your machine, we have all of the functionality that you get from the Vive controllers or the touch controllers replicated onto the gamepad controllers. You'll just do a play in editor like regular, and you'll be able to shoot your Tommy guns or shoot your goo guns, whatever. Since I do have a VR headset set up to this, there's two things you can do. You can just do selected viewport in Pi. The benefit of this is, I've got my headset. You can actually, in here, see everything that's going on. What doesn't work, if you are on Oculus, is the hands won't work in here. You'll have to go to VR preview. So I'm going to go to that real quick. That is drug underneath here. If you go to VR preview, it actually pulls it out. But see, I'm gonna have my hands in here. I'll be able to throw everything. The final option you can do for testing, and they all have different benefits, is a standalone game. Standalone game is actually going to launch like a unique instance of the game. So that can be pretty useful for getting the full experience of testing your asset. Most of the time here, here at NVIDIA, when we're working on it, we're going to be in selected viewport or VR preview, depending on if you have a VR headset attached to your machine or not. Believe it or not, some people like to, even though they're doing VR development, they spend a lot of time not in VR, just tweaking the blueprints for rapid iteration. So all of them are valid workflows. So that's how you actually launch stuff, see stuff inside of UE4. The next question you might have is, well, how should I test my mod? I would not recommend. So you're going to be initially like, I just want to hack this, right? I just want to hack it. I'm going to go in here, for instance, like I just said, where I've got my multiplayer base. I'm going to go to my details pad. And I am just going to, this is all I want to do. I'm actually working on the legitimate level itself. I'm going to go ahead and put paint guns on the whole thing, right? So let me pull the paint guns. And I'm just going to put it in there. I'm going to launch. Actually, we can check this real quick by hitting, I believe, 6. If you're on the number pads down here, which you can't see, we actually have all these levels hooked up to buttons. Here we go. We'll go to 9. So what you should see is now in Cannon Skeet, I've got my nice, lovely squirt guns, which are not going to do anything against that. Now, the reason you don't... Oh, a little bit of vibration there. The reason I recommend against just hacking and then saving later is that you might have some bad references, first of all. But the other thing is, when we update the mod kit, when we push an update to the mod kit, which doesn't happen very often, but it did happen last night, how Epic Game Launcher currently works is it will overwrite anything you've changed, except for if it's in the mods folder. So this is why it's important to basically, anything you're going to start working on, you want to go ahead and move it into the mods folder. Just work from there. Just work in the mods folder. You can make your own levels that way. So if I was going to do a foam gun replacement, you could save a new version of User VR Base 2 and just go in here, remove the existing foam gun level by hitting select, remove selected, and add in your modded version. And then you can just play it and it'll be part of the standard lineup. The other idea that we like to do here is the idea of a standalone level. So I'll go ahead and open a new empty level. Don't save. I can save this anywhere over here on the left. I could make a new folder, which is like my standalone levels or something like that. And actually how I'm going to do this is I'm going to talk to you guys through the big top example of how to do a standalone level. So what we have here actually is so let's go ahead and dive into it right now, and I'll actually show you guys how I'm going to make a standalone level, which would be really useful for testing. One thing that we wanted to do, it's actually a mod you can get right now, is this arena tent. You go open up this level, and it's a replacement. It's a replacement for the Envirosphere. Right now, when you're in the normal level, you've got the outdoor world. Well, what if you're in a big tent? So we built this really big tent, and we need to test it. So this is where it comes into a standalone level. So I go new. I'm gonna need to pull in over here on the left. I'm gonna need to pull in that arena tent that I just made. Everything's under, all of our sample mods that we ship are under sample mods. I'm gonna pull in this arena tent. I'm gonna pull in all the stuff I was talking about earlier. Let me go ahead and grab the stream lights, which is right here. Oh, suddenly got a lot prettier. And then technically what we probably want to pull in is just one of the sample games, just so we can have it around. So stream foam gun base 2. There. Now we have what I would call a sample level, or a standalone level that you could just work here, right? There's only a couple things I have to do to get this to work. You go to the persistent level. We actually have to stream all those levels I just put in. So I'm going to go stream. Now the nice thing is when you pull off one of these, you can just start typing. So we had a few in here. I'm gonna have to like do this real quick so I can actually read over here. So I'm gonna stream in my arena tent. Copy that. We're gonna keep going. I'm gonna type in my misspelled stream lights. And we're gonna stream in the foam gun. Stream foam gun base 2. I'm gonna make all these visible after load. Pile that. The other, I think this is all we need. Let me go ahead and hit selected viewport. Yeah, so now we have this kind of like sample standalone level where you can just play and iterate just for your mod, right? So this is a great way to like be able to really quickly iterate inside of just your mod. The only thing I didn't add in here is actually there's something in user VR base 2, which is the teleport border. I would need to add that in as well so I'd be at the right height and I could still teleport around. But this is actually how we iterated on most of our games. When we did this, is we actually had a long set of standalone levels, which is just the lights, the Envirosphere, and the particular game I want to work on at the time. It just kind of makes things faster for iteration. You eventually, before you finish up, you'll want to put it into the main list, for instance, so you get the full experience. But this is a standalone level. Which is, like I said, it's a very useful tool for modding in VR Funhouse. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this arena mod that we just did, this arena tent. I just used it quickly for this example of how to use a standalone, but there's some important things about the Envirosphere that I want to talk about first, because it's what I want to try to get across in most of the tutorials today is some of the stuff that's a little bit harder to document and a lot easier for me to just talk to you about. So let's go ahead, let's unhide all this stuff just so we can see the Envirosphere. So there's no lights in the Envirosphere right now. The Envirosphere only takes, it looks really good as it sits right now. I mean, you may disagree, but we think it looks really good. It only takes up about a millisecond or a millisecond and a half of render time for looking this good. The reason for that is it's almost entirely static. It's statically baked, and we made it as cheap as possible for as good looking as we could make it. How do we do that? There is actually, if we take a look in here, so if your mod is going to be change out the Envirosphere, you'll actually see if I pull this down so you can actually see it better. There's actually quite a few lights in here. So how we work with the Envirosphere is there's something else I want to show you about that. It is a trick that we learned as we were developing VR Funhouse to make it as cheap as possible. If I hit Effects World on these lights, it's how they're going to default come in. They will actually light the world. This is how they're actually going to, if you wanted to change your lighting or anything like that, that needs to be checked. So what we do is we put in our new lights. They're set default how they are. We do our relighting. You're going to go ahead and go build lighting only. Once your lighting build is done, reselect all these lights, all these point lights, uncheck Effects World, then save it. That way there is basically no lights in the calculation for any of the dynamic objects. This seemed to work the best, seemed to give us the best performance. So when we built the arena tent, that is the method we did as well here. This is purely statically lit. You've got all these lights in here, and you'll see again, if I pull up the details, we have this Effects World unchecked. So I'm not going to sit here and show you guys, going through 3ds Max, building the tent, pulling it in and all that. But let's just say Unreal Engine 4 a little bit. You're able to build this arena tent. You built lighting. You got it all good to go. You're like, man, all right, I'm ready to put this in as a mod. The first thing we want to do is we did not build it in the sample mod or in the mods folder because we were naughty. So I need to move my work over into the mods folder. This needs to happen in a very specific order. So I'm going to try to make this bigger so we can really emphasize the point. We're going to grab this tent. We're going to start with the assets folder. You need to move assets, then map. So we're going to move the assets over to the mods folder. We're going to go move folder. It's going to pull all those assets over. We're going to go back again. You'll notice this folder is still here, but it's empty. That's important for later. The next is we'll actually move the map itself. And then finally, since we want this to be a replacement, we're going to need to rename it Envirosphere. Now you think you'd be done at this point, but there's 2 more steps you need to do. So what I want to show you here is if I right click on this folder, I go to Show and Explorer. Why are all these assets still here, right? Like it's a whole bunch of stuff on my hard drive, but this is empty. This is a function of Unreal Engine 4. Where since you've moved that stuff, it has a redirection. So it's actually going to look at this place on the hard drive and redirect it to the mods folder. We don't want that. That will do some weird stuff to the cooking process. We want everything to be just in the mods. So how to fix this is you're going to right click on Big Top Sample, and you're going to fix up redirectors in folder. This will just take a couple seconds to process. And then we're going to do the same in the mods folder. And now if we go ahead and show this in Explorer, it's empty. This is what you want. You basically want to make sure that if you didn't work in the mods folder and you're moving stuff around, you do assets, then map, and then you fix redirectors. At this point, now that I have this mod sitting here, I'm going to go to File. If you are cooking just things like blueprints or assets or anything like that, you're actually want to cook the mods folder itself. If you're doing a map, you want to cook from the map, and then once you cook the map will actually go out and grab all the assets that you need. So we cook mods map for Steamwork upload. You would click on the map itself, you'd hit open, and it would actually begin cooking in this process. Now I'm not going to sit here. We're not going to sit here and cook in front of you right now because the first time you cook, what VR Funhouse will do is it will cook the entire game the very first time, because we don't ship the cook data along with you. So I had cancel there, so it stops. So we want VR Funhouse to cook the entire game first. It'll take about 30-35 minutes. The longest I've ever seen is about an hour on a slower computer. That's going to be the very first time you ever cook. And what we want is we want to have everything in there. And then after that, it will just cook the mods folder. So the next cook of this level would take about 20 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds. And if I go here, where this actually puts this, under VR Funhouse, saved, cooked. So you'll actually see that this is where we would start, the cook data would start showing up, would be under VR Funhouse. So your cook data is going to show up under here. It's going to be mods folder, and it's going to have all your good stuff. I canceled it early enough that we didn't get anything populated in there. Once you actually have that cooked, next time we're back, I'll show you guys the Steam Workshop's upload process. That is, so let me go ahead and, I'm going to go ahead and, this is documented on the website pretty well. But we actually have a process here with an upload bat under VR Funhouse Workshop upload. If you edit this, you set your username, your Steam username and password. Under this VDF file, which you can open, let's edit that in Notepad++ real quick. You'll actually see you can put your mod title, your mod description. It is set to friends only at first when you launch this. You'll edit this. You'll edit your preview image. You'll double click on upload. Boom, your mod's going to be up on Steam Workshop. So it's the order is create the mod, cook the mod, upload the mod. This was a pretty kind of high level look at just a quick map replacement, but I did want to dive in a little bit deeper here next and kind of talk about this Tommy gun mod that we created. The important thing about it is it's going to talk about the idea of creating replacing a weapon, and giving you a quick look at like how some of these blueprints work and look. We're going to be doing a couple more of these later on, so feel free to shoot some stuff in the chat if there is things you'd like to see next time, etc. So one thing that we really wanted to do, kind of right off the bat, when we were like, man, what type of mods do we want? So I'm going to go back to my user VR base 2 real quick and open that up. Man, I would love to have Tommy guns for our shooting gallery. So let me pull up the shooting gallery real quick. And it was surprisingly easier than we thought to do. So it's kind of one of our first test mods when we were like putting together the modding process. So if you remember this from the beginning of our presentation about 25 minutes ago, there is the drag and drop right in the middle of the level. So what we'd want to do, which I'd modded this once but didn't save it, hopefully. Otherwise, we're going to have goo guns. Is we're going to find what guns are actually used in the level. So we'll go find those real quick. I'll find that it is the gun A complete. I would want to, let me see, I don't think you can actually see down there. Nope, it's going to be outside of your range. So let me pull a content browser up here so you guys can see a little this right here. It's a gun A complete. I would grab this, copy it over to the mods folder. I have a gun A complete sitting right there. While I have this session up and running, I would go ahead and grab this. I would click here twice. And to confirm that, I'll browse back and notice that, yes, it is still in the mods folder. It's referencing this. So now at this point, I know, now I'm going to put this back down at the bottom, that this level should be referencing this gun, the gun in the mods folder. So let's go ahead and double click it. And I'm going to show you guys briefly review what's happening in this blueprint, for instance. This is an introduction to how all these weapons work. They work by taking interfaces from the pawn, taking that and grabbing all your clicks and your buzzes and everything from your controllers here and doing something with it. So this particular, the gun blueprint starts right here. Shoot. How do we get the shoot custom event? The shoot custom event actually comes from, so we create the custom event right here. Add custom event. We name it super custom event. Basically, we want something to happen in here, and at this point, with the custom event we wanted was shoot. We just want when I have something. When I pull this trigger, I want something to shoot. So what I'll go to over here is that we set up all these interfaces in the pawn. We have a trigger boolean. We have a trigger float. So the float trigger is used in the clown painter, for instance. It is how much the trigger is pushed. The boolean is just is pushed or not pushed, which with our gun blueprint, we want the boolean version. So what we did here is under trigger boolean, we did a branch. We grab, this is going to be the condition that we give you as, is it triggered or not? If it is true, I'm actually, like I said, I can find that custom event that I just created. Shoot, super custom event that I just made is going to show up here as well. So you just make a custom event in your event graph, and then you link it to an interface. So you'll see that we're using shoot. If it's triggered, then we're returning that node, and if it is false, we just return a blank node. So this trigger is clicked. We hit true, we hit shoot, we go to our event graph, and then from there all this extra logic spawns. We spawn our gunshot. We have a sequence of branches off. This giant thing right here is our animation for our gun. This is a bit unorthodox. What you literally could do is if you have a gun that is already animated, you could just play your animation for the shoot. All this is doing is it's taking, it looks like a big mess, but what it is taking is, I'm gonna go ahead and zoom over to my gun here, is we actually have these all as individual components. Trigger, hammer, the cartridge, cylinder, and we are animating those. As you can see here, we've got a couple timelines, recoil, hammer, and cylinder. So that's all this is up here. It looks big, but it is really, once you start drilling down, you'll see that it just kind of launches this timeline that does the recoil. The recoil does some transformations and rotations. Same with the rest. After the next thing we're doing in our shoot is we're actually doing a trace from the beginning of the gun to what it's going to hit. And then depending on what it hits is we're going to do some other stuff. We're going to add a hit effect, decal, sound. Those are all based on, if you even go further down here, we have physical materials hit up. So if it hits default, it's going to do a certain sound, certain impact effect, certain decal. Same with wood, stone, metal, and ceramic. So that is the gist of what happens in the standard gun. Now, if we wanted to make this gun shoot forever, for instance, which is the kind of what you would expect from an automatic weapon, basically we want to put a loop in so that once shoot is done, it's just going to keep looping. And that is exactly how we did this. But what we also would need is we need a way to break that loop if the trigger is released. So this is where you would add an additional custom event. So right now, super custom event, we're just going to rename that unshoot, because we don't want it to shoot. And on our trigger boolean, what we would do is when the trigger was released, we would call the unshoot command. We'll go back to the event graph. And how you would basically do this is, let's go ahead and move back from the shoot event a little bit. You would put a gate in. We'll start it closed. When you shoot, you will open the gate. We'll actually want a sequence here. This is one of the big differences for you guys who are familiar with Unreal 3's Kismet versus Blueprint. This is actually one of the bigger ones. We want to open the gate first, then we'll want to enter the gate when we shoot. And then we will put a delay from this exit. We'll do an additional sequence. The more you play with Blueprint, the more this will feel natural. So don't feel overwhelmed. If you're wondering like why I'm doing this, I will explain it here momentarily. So basically, we'll actually want to see. You got to think through your logic here. I actually want to go to the sequence first. I want to continue on with my shot. So I pulled the trigger. It opened the gate. It went into the gate. It went through the sequence. It did a shot. The second part is I want to do a delay. And I want to go through the gate again. So I have a loop here. If you see this would just keep going. It'll keep doing the shot. It'll wait 0.2 seconds. So this is basically how fast your gun's going to fire, one way or another. So if I play this right now, now this is where it gets dangerous on a live Twitch stream. I might just totally mess this up. But if I play this right now, if I pull the trigger, I will suddenly have like an automatic shooting revolver. So I'm going to actually give this a 0.2 seconds. That sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and let's do a VR preview. I believe the cannons or the shooting gallery should be. I think the shooting gallery is 8. Yeah. So if I go ahead and pull this trigger, you see I'm not pulling the trigger anymore, but we're constantly firing. So we've already made an automatic pistol, but if I keep pulling the trigger, it just adds more shots. It doesn't actually stop the thing. So we need a way to, when you're, like I said, that's where that unshoot command comes in. Now when it's released, I will just simply close the gate. So let's try that again. So we'll go to 8. Pulls out. Now I'm holding the trigger, releasing. So hopefully you guys, you're not probably getting the sound effects from this, but you should be able to see that the pistol is shooting and unreleasing. So that is effectively, kind of how to make a quick automatic revolver. Now we did a couple other fancier things when it came to the actual Tommy gun, but it's really just extensions from there. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the Tommy gun blueprint and show you guys the changes we made. So obviously I swapped in a Tommy gun mesh. That was step 1. And then under the event graph, so here's that automatic firing control. It looks a little bit crazier than the normal one. All I did here was, see, we've got shoot, we've got unshoot. You can see shoot, we're comparing. We added the idea of a magazine in the Tommy gun, so we're just basically looking at how many rounds are fired. Once we hit 50, it doesn't let you fire anymore. We close the gate, we do a sound effect, which is the dry fire, right? So there's no more bullets, and we added this idea of reload. So the reload on the grip. So if you go over here, see we've got a grip boolean, and that's going to be on the Vive controller. It's those little squeezies on the Rift. It should be this right here. We do a true for a reload. So at that point, all I'm doing is when I squeeze that, I set this counter, this magazine counter, back to 0, and you get another 50 bullets. So that's some basics of modding in VR Funhouse. There's a lot of interesting ideas you guys can do here, guys and gals. You can do simple mods such as, like I said, replacing the gun with whatever you want, changing out destructibles. If you just saw, we released a Winter Wonderland mod, which will replace the Envirosphere primarily with a winter showcase. But then we did a bunch of little touches throughout the game. A lot of those are direct replacement mods. You can actually, if you're interested, download the mod. Go ahead and look in the mods folder in the cooked content. You can kind of see how we laid that out. There's probably like 30 direct replacements, and then a bunch of assets organized under the assets tree. I hope this gives you guys kind of give you guys a rough idea of some of the ideas behind what you can do with modding. We're going to be doing, like I said, more of these. We've got 3 or 4 more that we're going to be scheduled. So you can email additional questions you might have to lightspeedsupport@nvidia.com. It's actually on the Steam page as well. It's just basically our support email for this. So if you have things you want to cover in future sessions, I'll go ahead and prepare for them and show you how to do things, and all that good jazz. We really look forward to doing this more, to really kind of help you guys understand what we learned creating VR Funhouse. There's a lot of intricacies to VR. There's things that can make you sick in VR, which you're not really used to when you're creating games on a desktop scenario. So, thanks for joining on this. We will be hosting this on YouTube and Twitch as well for posterity's sake, so you guys can rewatch this. I look forward to seeing you guys at the next one, which I believe will be the first week of January. And good luck modding. Don't forget to go check out the mod contest and check out our latest mods that are out there. I think there's about a good 20 of them on there. So thanks for your time, everybody, and we will see you at the next one.